Hi, everyone here and around the world. It's great to have so many of you from different countries coming to this Earthfiles YouTube channel weekly broadcast. Now over 275,000 subscribers, and I appreciate you all so much. Tonight, I want to share more with you about this important new book, Imminent Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs by Lue Elizondo. And this tonight is with him to talk about it. And beginning near the year 2000, Lue worked for about 7 years in the Pentagon investigating UFO UAP phenomena. And that's when he was former head of the Defense Department's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, also known as AATIP. Lue Elizondo was officed on the 3rd floor, C Ring, 5th corridor, Alpha Suite in the Pentagon, until he resigned effective October 4th, 2017, with a letter of resignation and frustration. Lue Elizondo was concerned that the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense was not seriously investigating UFO UAP phenomena. In his resignation letter, Lue said, quote, "Despite overwhelming evidence at both the unclassified and classified levels of many eyewitness accounts by the Navy and other services of unusual aerial systems interfering with U.S. military weapon platforms and displaying beyond next-generation capabilities." And he asked, why aren't we spending more time and effort on this issue? Close quote. And last Friday, September 20th, Lue joined me for an Earthfiles YouTube channel recorded interview to share with you all tonight, in which he also says, quote, "We are absolutely not alone in this universe, and it's to the point now where the evidence is obscene," close quote, meaning there is so much hard evidence now of an alien presence on Earth that it is outrageous that humanity has still not been told the truth. Hi, Lue. It's great to see you again. And you know, your book is important. It's going to go down in history. And the title, Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, is, to me, it grabs me. But then when I opened up the jacket on the book, I was stunned by the words that are there. I think they are absolutely true, but I was stunned to see them. Quote, "The stakes could not be higher. Imminent is a first-hand revelatory account inside the Pentagon's most closely guarded secret about UFO UAP phenomena, and is a call to action to confront humanity's greatest existential questions." Close quote. But why, Lue, is the truth about other intelligences in this universe that you are confirming? Why is the truth the Pentagon's most closely guarded secret in 2024?
Linda, first of all, thank you sincerely for having me on your program. And I also want to thank your wonderful audience for having to endure me once again. But look, I have often said that I stand on the shoulders of giants, and those shoulders are your shoulders. I am confident we would not be having this conversation right now had it not been for the decades-long work that you have doggedly pursued over the course of many decades. And in fact, as an investigative journalist, you had the gumption to do something that very few journalists ever had the guts to do. And that was to pursue this topic and basically say, to hell with media protocol, there's something to this, and I want to get to the bottom of it. So let me just say, for the record, not only a big thank you to you and your amazing audience, but we owe a lot about where we are today in this conversation because of you and because of your efforts. So I just want to make sure that before we start any other conversation about why I wrote the book and what did I mean and why the Pentagon keeping secrets, I just wanted to tell you that. I also wanted to tell you that you've got a lot of fans. There's people that I know that have never watched CNN or Fox News, but by golly, they know Linda Moulton Howe, and my neighbor's one of them. And so, look, you're making an impact. You are really reaching. And also, big heartfelt congratulations. I know recently you met a new mark in your YouTube following and subscribers. So I just wanted to say congratulations.
We broke over 275,000.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let me get back to your question. So why is this one of the biggest secrets of the Pentagon? The government is not this big monolithic thing that we all like to think it is. It's actually separate, disparate little fiefdoms, if you will, little kingdoms within a bigger ecosystem. And so you have Department of Energy, Department of Defense, the intelligence community, but then within there you have the CIA, but then you have law enforcement like the FBI and all these different organizations. And in those organizations, you have interests and you have people doing things that are in the best interest maybe of their agency, maybe of their office, maybe even their little division. Secondly, you have to look at this in the context of time. When we really started noticing UAP a long time ago, decades and decades ago, really at the end of the 1940s and into the early 1950s, the government at the time was in the middle of a Cold War with then Soviet Union. And it was this winner takes all chess match. And by the way, the Cold War is kind of a misnomer. It wasn't really cold at all. It was actually a pretty hot war full of proxy wars and kind of a winner takes all mentality. And so you had this real threat then called Russia, the former Soviet Union, now it was Soviet Union back then, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had nuclear weapons. And so I think the generals in the Pentagon said, look, we have this thing called UFOs over here, and yeah, we know that they can do stuff we can't, and they're interested in our nuclear capabilities, but they're not outwardly hostile. Meanwhile, we've got Soviet Union over here, which is a real threat. They've got nukes. We saw them coming into our controlled U.S. airspace. We saw them basically being very interested in our sensitive military installations. And we also saw them, to some degree, interfere with our nuclear equities and nuclear capabilities. But we still had no idea where they're from or what they wanted or anything else. And so to have that conversation with the American people is a really uncomfortable conversation to have. In essence, why admit a problem for which there's no solution at the current time? And so the decision was made to go ahead and obfuscate. Let's go ahead and stigmatize this topic to such a point where no one would even want to spell the word or the letters UFO because of what it means. The problem is that they did such a good job ridiculing this topic and setting up, orchestrating this deception campaign to tell the American people this isn't true. And if you think about it, you're crazy. If you talk about it, you're nuts. It was so effective that even today, people are having a hard time kind of unwinding or untangling this ball of yarn that the government had weaved itself for over 70 years.
Lieutenant Colonel Philip J. Corso, who I got to spend about 5 hours with when the 50th anniversary of the Roswell crash occurred in July of 1997. And we did a long interview in Roswell through Coast to Coast AM with Art. And then I got back to where I was living at the time in Philadelphia, and he called me. And he said, I want to show you some more documents. I want to show you another manuscript that is not in this book. And he said, can you fly down? And I did. And I got to hear from him some of his frustrations of working in the Eisenhower administration, in which he and others felt that everything was happening should be told. And that's where he said the biggest problem that we had when Ike was president was internecine warfare in the Pentagon. Well, that was a long time ago, and yet it is still currently a huge problem. And I think what I'm getting to you is reality has been classified for so long. We have not been living truth. And yet what I see happening in Washington is that there are warring camps there again. And do you think that Senator Gillibrand is actually going to be able to have real subcommittee hearings, which they are now saying might evolve in this fall? Do you think there's any chance of opening up the truth at last with you swinging across the bow, your very important book? Will Gillibrand, will others, do you think that they're actually going to be able to tell the truth? Because the Pentagon's strategy seems to be you warn people if they talk, they're going to go to prison. Everything is clamped down, as you well know. How do we get out of this vice that has been there since at least before 1947?
Great question. First of all, I'm cautiously optimistic that there are factions now, both within the executive branch and the legislative branch, that want this conversation to happen. I also think that the Pentagon needs to remember that there's this other part of the government, this entire other branch of the government called the legislative branch. And they are entitled through certain committees to be informed of certain activities and efforts. So if somebody in the Pentagon is making a unilateral decision not to inform Congress and not to inform the president, well, that's a problem, because that is what you consider an extra constitutional activity. And nobody has that authority. And so I'm very optimistic that people like Senator Gillibrand, Senator Rounds, Mike Rounds, Senator Rubio, Senator Chuck Schumer. Look, this is a I just named 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, right? They can never get along on anything. And yet on this one topic, UAPs, they're actually agreeing, right? And you have the same thing in the House, whether it's Congressman Tim Burchett or Congresswoman AOC. This is the one topic they can actually agree on. And so you're beginning to see a unified effort like we've never had before. Plus, you have elements in the executive branch itself that wants the conversation to happen. You have people like right now, like John Podesta, who's part of this administration, who's working like hell behind the scenes to try to get this conversation up front and center. The problem is, and you called it out very well, there are still factions in the government that don't want to have this conversation. And so this is an ongoing process. There's a lot of dialogue going on. There's a lot at stake here. And the question is, how much can you talk about UFOs without compromising national security? Well, my opinion is quite a bit. The fact that we're not alone in the universe is not a classifiable fact.
Exactly. Everyone is owed the truth on that, Lou. And what gets me is, who is it that thinks that going on through 2024 to 25 and beyond, that they're still got the reins on to keep this from the world? That is so schizophrenic. It is so dangerous, especially in a country like this that's supposed to be of, by, and for the people and hasn't been for a long time. But there's another reason, I think, for why this is urgent, that we open up the truth. On your page 67, in your chapter 6 about orbs, you wrote, quote, "I was shocked by the frequency of how often these orbs have been reported, whether by commercial pilots or military pilots or by eyewitnesses on the ground, particularly around military test ranges and sensitive U.S. military facilities," close quote. I would add, in almost every human abduction case that I've ever investigated, in which I came to the conclusion they were dealing with something that could go matter, light, energy in their house, in their yard. Orbs were one of the transitions. The orbs are used for control. They are used for communication. And historically, since World War II, It was the mysterious unidentified Foo Fighters that originally were reported by military pilots as flying intelligently, was one of the phrases. And then later, from the 1960s onward, people in the UFO, human abduction syndrome, who have also encountered spheres of light. It's been in their cars, it's been in their bedrooms, it's been on a park, it's been all over the place. And they can be in a variety of colors. But the green orbs are sometimes from the abductee side, and I understand from you that the green orbs are sometimes considered dangerously aggressive. And I was so impressed that you put in your book about the fact that you had green spheres coming in and out through walls in your house. And what I hoped for the people out there who they're just as sane, down to earth as you could be, and they are afraid to even talk about something like green orbs. If you could explain what happened to you, your wife, your daughters, your house, that whole scene with the green orbs.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me go back because indigenous people and Aboriginal people have reported these orbs for centuries. For a very, this goes way back, way before Foo Fighters. These were military encounters, but indigenous and Aboriginal people have been reporting these orbs in some cases millennia. And there's even potentially petroglyphs of these interactions. Secondly, let me preface this. I struggle to put that in the book, to be completely honest with you, because I'm really opening myself up, and I've always considered myself a disciple of the scientific method. I went to school, to college, a microbiologist, immunologist, study of parasites. Then I became a special agent, really just data-driven, fact-driven, never really was interested in opinions or supposition or innuendos. So I've always been that way, very analytic and very scientific. But you're right. And I had to struggle because on one hand, I'm demanding transparency and truthfulness from the government. And if I wasn't truthful and transparent, even in my own book, that would have been hypocritical. So I knew I was going to take arrows. I knew by saying what I was going to say in that book that there were going to be people out there that would try to use that to discredit me. But the bottom line is, it is what it is. The fact is, not only did I see them, and if it had just been me, I never would have said anything. My wife saw them, my children saw them, and even some of our neighbors saw them. And oh, by the way, if that wasn't enough, other people that were involved in the AATIP program and OSAP program also experienced very similar things when they were in the program. And those are not my stories to tell, but I found it very perplexing. These were luminous balls anywhere between the size of maybe a volleyball to the size of a little baseball. No hard edges, no hard surfaces. Think of like a glowing green neon light that just would float right below the roof line, the ceiling of the house. I can see it right now as I'm thinking about it. In some cases, going all the way down the hallway, just moseying along like not a care in the world, and then disappearing, just going right through a wall or a door. Not a sound, not a mark, not an electric discharge.
So they were going through the walls.
They were, absolutely, yes.
You could see it pass right through as if it was at the subatomic level, somehow transferring through the wall.
All I can tell you is that when it made contact with the wall, it was almost like the wall wasn't there. It didn't stop, it didn't hesitate, and then kind of burrow through. It just passed right through, like the wall wasn't there. And so now, with that said, is it possible it was ball lightning? Is it possible it was St. Elmo's fire? Is it possible that there was some sort of static discharge in the electric cables in the attic and that was causing ionization of localized air? I guess. But it happened frequently. And it happened when it only started when I first got into AATIP while I was in the program. And then as soon as I left the program, it subsided. And so those are the facts that we do know. And some other individuals that I know personally had far more spectacular incidents than that, to the point where the US government was involved, like officially and formally involved in an investigation.
Right.
And yeah, I struggled for a while to determine whether or not I wanted to include that in the book. But at the end of the day, I really didn't have a choice. It is what it is.
I am so glad you did, because this is not something that is made up or is confused. This is extraterrestrial phenomena that is technology, and it is around the world, Lou, where there have been abductees, there have been the spheres of light in these different sizes and different colors. I think our planet is serving as a planet for us on the surface and other beings inside. I can't personally prove that yet, but my point is, then all of the technology that is reported by abductees, once upon a time, people were criticized because they said that they saw something pass through a wall, or that they saw a sphere that would come through the wall, and they would feel their body was literally moved out of the bed, and the only thing that's in front of them is one of these basketball or volleyball-sized spheres. So what's happening right now that seems really important is a few people, we are now talking about this as this is a fact, this is a technology, and what I'm beginning to see are the increasing number of physicists, engineers, doctors who are reaching out to me. They are telling me, showing me extraordinary information. They're still not comfortable with sitting down and talking. I'm waiting for that day, because then I think the world will start to be healthy again. But Lou, that technology and all of the technologies, as Philip J. Corso, when he had me come to Florida, he was showing me other information that he had even then, that if it had been made public, we would not be probably as far backwards as we are now.
Most of my time, if not all of my time in the government, investigating these encounters with my colleagues, were really military focused. You're talking military eyewitnesses, military pilots, maybe boat captains, special operators, intelligence people. We didn't really deal with a whole lot of civilians, but you would be shocked, Linda, shocked to know that the US government had people on their staff, medical professionals on their staff, and what their jobs was to investigate military and intelligence officials who had had a supposed UAP encounter and sustained a negative medical consequence. In essence, were injured. Now, people say, oh, that's a bunch of hooey. Really? Well, guess what? There are two people right now that I know, and I saw the documentation for one of them, that are on 100% medical disability by the US government. And why? The stated reason? Because of their involvement in a UAP encounter. It was basically their involvement in Rendlesham. And I got to be careful here, because it's really, again, not my story to tell. But I will tell you, I validated it, and it was actually a senator was the one who got the medical files released.
I worked on John Burroughs, Rendlesham, Bentwaters. It's in my Earthfiles work, in the books. That was a huge part of my investigations. And the fact that there were so many military interactions that were also close and face-to-face with a lot of witnesses, and that John Burroughs ended up with his mitral valve in his heart disintegrating. The doctors tie it to the exposure to frequencies at Bentwaters, and that's what John thinks too.
That's right, and he's not the only one, by the way. There's other people I know right now that have suffered severe, in some cases, medical consequences as a result of this technology, whatever this technology is. Now, the question is, the natural question is it inadvertent or is it deliberate? And right now, I'm not too sure. I often tell people, look, there's a lot of technology we have that is used to our benefit. But if we don't know how to use it, it can hurt us. So here's an example. I use a microwave oven all the time to heat up my coffee. But if I were to, let's say, I don't know, put my hand in a microwave oven, chances are I'm going to cause damage to myself. I'm going to be harmed. It's not intentional by the microwave to hurt me. It just is that I happened to get close to it when it was working, right? So the same thing as when you go to an airport. If I jump on a 737 on a flight to Fort Lauderdale, there's no real threat. But if I jump onto the, let's say, the tarmac on the runway of where that airplane's sitting while the engine is spooling up and I stand behind the jet engine, well, chances are I'm going to get injured. I'm going to get burned and I'm going to lose my hearing. It's not intentional by the jet engine or by the crew to hurt me. It's just a consequence of being too close to the technology as the technology is being utilized. And so I'm not sure yet if some of this is intentional or not. I think a lot of it may be inadvertent. It's just human beings, soft tissue coming up close to maybe some frequency of radiation that is very bad for us.
But what you're raising was said to me in a chapter in my book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, when back in 1994, Ray Boucher, who has done a lot of work in UFO research, he's in Nebraska, he called me and said that a man from the DIA and another from the NSA had approached him because of work he was doing in Nebraska on eschatology, the science or looking at the possible end of the world. And that they approached him in Nebraska and said they wanted to have the work that he was presenting, but they wanted him to get in touch with me because Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1, had just come out. And I told Ray, give them a copy of my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1, and have them write in the margins. And that will be safe for them, and it will give me education. They proposed that they would write to me in floppy disks. And I think it's still one of the most important communications I've ever had from people working in the NSA and the DIA. And all I'm going to do tonight is share one paragraph that relates to what we're talking about. The non-human entities and or extraterrestrials, they switched back and forth. Now they went non-human entities or non-human extraterrestrials being dealt with in our psi mind control weapons development, using the mind to drive a plane, a craft, the mind to set off technology, and who are apparently the beings allowing themselves to be used for a time are neither benevolent nor neutral. And I still remember for the first moment that I read that sentence from those two men in my computer back in 1994, the complexities of what they already knew about the ETs were astonishing in everything that they sent me. But this was a key because all of us have wanted to know, what is the intent? You raised it yourself. What is the true intent? And how much is deception for reasons that may have to do with interacting on this planet from being interior, inhabiting the earth, and coming to the surface for what they want whenever they want. And that leads to the question having to do with what is it that a whole variety of extraterrestrial biological entities and their artificial intelligence entities that look like humanoids, but they're not biological, they're both here. Do you have any sense from any of your contacts, because we're not naming them, about what do they really want? There are the Greys, a bunch. There are the Talls, a bunch. There are the Nordics that are the most human looking of them all. There are the reptiles. There are the blue teals. These are real beings. They exist. But do we have any sense, as we are beginning to open this up, your book being such a strong force, what does our government know about what each of them really wants?
Intent is something that I have found to be very anthropomorphic, very human. Humans have intent. We look at everything through human eyes. What is the intent? We have to be able to accept an answer that might be uncomfortable for us. It might not be an intent thing at all. It might be motivation, but motivation and intent can be two different things, right? So, for example, when a shark is hungry, its motivation is to eat, so it goes ahead and bites a surfer. Its intent isn't to inflict harm or cause pain to a surfer. The shark's hungry. It just thinks it's a seal. Just, I'm going to eat the seal. I'm hungry. There's no process in there to actually derive intent. It's just motivated by hunger, and therefore it does.
This communication was directly from people working for the NSA and the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, at that time. We saw their credentials.
But my point being is that intent is, I can tell you all day long, my intent is to do X, Y, and Z. But in real life, it could be A, B, C. And you think it's X, Y, Z because I tell you that. But in reality, it could be something completely different.
But the context is when they say the NHEs, the non-human entities, are neither benevolent nor neutral, they're not trying to find out. They're asserting a statement. When they went to see Ray Boucher, it was because they were worried about either an end of the world for humans. They were worried about strategies. They were worried about things that were behind neither benevolent nor neutral. Now, my particular position in this for the last 45 years, starting out investigating animal mutilations that were bloodless and trackless, hearts that were missing from the insides of animals with no excisions on the outside. It started for me right at a very difficult level. But I find that when I was talking with Philip J. Corso and Ray Boucher and a lot of other people, that the issue of are we dealing with benevolence that comes packaged in high strangeness for reasons that we still don't understand? Or is it, as they say, the NHEs being dealt with in our psi mind control weapons development and who are apparently allowing themselves to be used, for a time, are neither benevolent nor neutral? It has haunted me ever since 1994, and that by 2024, I thought by now it would all be introduced. We would be in a universe where there was lots of other intelligence. Why does it continue to be hidden? And that's why I worry about benevolence.
Would you worry about a species like us that kills ourselves, destroys ourselves, figures out all sorts of ways to harm one another in cruel, terrible ways, not just warfare, even during peace? Look at all the crime in these big cities and the awful things people do to each other. Are we really ready to be good neighbors? I mean, can we really be trusted to be part of this neighborhood of other potential life forms that, if they potentially exist, I don't trust ourselves to even balance a checkbook, let alone have that type of technology, because we don't know how to behave. We just can't, it's like Mama said, we can't have nice things. We can't. We cannot be trusted with even the most simplest forms of decorum. Look at social media right now. We're not even at war. Get on social media. It's horrid. I mean, the things people say and do, and you think that we're not you, but some people think we're ready to go out and be ambassadors to whatever's out there. I think we got a long way to go, Linda. And I think anything that's out there that's got that technology realizes we're not ready.
I understand exactly what you are saying. And yet there's something in me that feels like that there are beings, perhaps, and I'll ask you straightforwardly, do you have any firsthand information or documents about the tall whites that Charles Hall, working at S4, Area 51, wrote 3 books about the work that he was around these tall whites? And the bottom line was that they were spiritual. They could kill a human or anything, bang, 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 if they want to. So they're not afraid being on this planet because they are a higher order of technology and ability than we are. And I asked Charles Hall one time, why would the tall whites be on this planet where the Earth's surface populations are not operating under the same tenets that you're saying that they do, that they will kill others not because they want to in war, but they will to keep them from hurting their children? Are we working with something like the tall whites for another bigger reason? And is that why they are here on a planet where the top population is humans?
So, Linda, great question. My focus in AATIP was nuts and bolts. I am aware of what you're saying. Let's say, just hypothetically, there's this ultra advanced species that's here monitoring us, and call them whatever you want, tall whites or whatever. Once people, us, the monkeys in the cage, we realize that there is this superior species, superior intellectually, superior technologically, maybe in other ways. At that point, the essence of what a human being is, which is free will, now goes away, because most people at that point realize, you know what, we're not in control and we're not the alpha species. And we have to remember that, a lot of people would not be able to handle the fact, and governments wouldn't be able, and religions could potentially be threatened if there's this other reality that's now thrust upon us. A lot of people could be a lot of organizations, institutions, very insecure with that knowledge.
But the truth is the truth. And there are other beings beyond us. We are not the only life form in the universe. And if we could tell the whole truth, then Lue, maybe there would be less war between humans if we were really living the reality of tall whites and Nordics and grays who could run ripshod over us if they wanted to, but they don't.
In order for us to be able to first understand out there, wherever that is, we first have to understand it here. Because no amount of preparation, if we are not ready as a species, then nothing we do is going to help us be more prepared. We have to do a better job of understanding who we are, what we are, learn to treat each other a little better before I think we are ever ready to unlock more secrets of the universe. I don't think as a species, there's a lot of good people in the world like you who could probably handle it and want to know. But there's also a lot of people that, quite frankly, they've got a long way to go. They've got a long way to go to know themselves and to respect other people before we thrust upon them yet another reality, right? They're having a hard, they're struggling enough in this reality, let alone to superimpose yet another reality.
There's one other layer, and that is what real physicists, real engineers, and real doctors are being exposed to other information that we're not getting publicly. There is a source, I know who they are, I can't say, and have communicated that using the James Webb Telescope, that we now have seen at least 6 different solar systems in which there's no question artificial light in the night. And that artificial light has been something that astrophysicists and the James Webb had thought there might be the possibility of looking for such artificial light. Now, if there are 6, and I'm assuming that there's 6 billion out there in the huge universe, if we don't come to some honest term with ourselves as Homo sapien on this planet, before we announce 6 solar systems with artificial light, then 100, then 200, I would like to see this Earth evolve in a healthy way. And I think it will only happen with truth. And you are part of opening that up. What would you say tonight to the scientists who know this other information?
Truth always prevails. So if there is life beyond this planet, which it looks like right now, or maybe within this planet or under the oceans, but there is non-human intelligence, if that is the case, then I believe, and that is a universal truth, I believe that truth should be provided to everybody in the world. I don't believe any organization, religion, or institution has the right to keep that from the rest of humanity. I think it's a crime.
And if you were going to project just based on everything that you know, what year do you think we will get the full bore announcement? We're not alone in this universe. We never have been, and we're going to move into a new epoch of telling the truth.
We have Congress passing legislative laws and landmark laws, almost every year now on this topic, right? So we're putting money into this now and resources into it. We have whistleblowers lined up, ready to come forward and have the conversation with Congress and have the conversation with the American people. So I think it's happening. I know it's not happening as fast as people want it to, but I think it's happening. And I'm optimistic that in our children's lifetime, they will be living in a completely different paradigm. And if they're not, then we've done something wrong.
On that note, Lou, I want to thank you for the discussion tonight. I wish we could talk for hours and hours. And I know that you know the truth is we're not alone in this vast universe and never have been.
And we're absolutely not alone. And it is to the point where the evidence is obscene. It's there.
That's right.
Thank you for what you're doing. I promise you, it's making a huge difference. I told you my neighbor is just one example of somebody. He will listen to you, and you can put on Fox News or CNN, and he won't pay attention. But boy, Linda Moulton Howe comes out, and man, I'll tell you, Tim, the very next morning, hey, did you hear Linda? We have got to learn to interact with ourselves before we could ever hope to interact with something else.
In the interests of more truth, before we transition tonight to Ian for your comments and questions, I want to give you a few more details that I have learned from an aerospace source who still wants to remain anonymous, but he feels strongly that the whole Earth human population deserves to know honest facts behind the assertion that we Homo sapien are not alone in this universe, and we never have been. In July 2024, a few weeks ago, I received this communication, quote, "Just received from the Pine Gap, Australia downstream feed from the James Webb Space Telescope this list of 6 habitable planets in 6 different solar systems beyond Earth. 1. Proxima Centauri b. 2. TRAPPIST-1e. I've shown you that in animation and illustrations starting back 2 years ago that would be the planet, TRAPPIST-1e. 3. Kepler 186f. 4. LHS 114 0B, 5 K2 18B, 6 Gliese 12B, close quote. And Ian, see if any of our Earthfiles audience might have access to a planetarium star map program. And if they do, hearing this now, they could help me find each of the 6 solar systems in relationship to each other. That's the map I want to do, and then continue to update with more information. And if they can help me find each of these 6 solar systems in relationship to each other, then the key is that these are places where artificial light at night has been received in data from the James Webb Space Telescope. Also, some of you might be in astronomy departments at colleges, and that would be perhaps a way also for you to contribute to doing a star map that clearly shows not only the 6 solar systems, but the relationship to other star systems that potentially could be in this same category. And if I can work with a map that you all could help me do, I would like to begin to do more updates on what I am learning from people having to do with this astronomical news that you're not seeing in television, radio, or newsprint on our planet yet. And now, dear Ian, where are we tonight in terms of questions, comments, and welcome?
Thanks, Linda. Yes, that was an amazing interview there with Lue, very recent and up to date.
Yes, and he
set
is
our chat live tonight.
He's so
There's
great.
So many questions.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, there's lots of questions here that are triggered by the interview this evening. So I think we've got lots of questions lined up, but I know we've got very little time, and I know our audience are keen to share some of their own personal experiences, etc., with you. But we've got some questions. First of all, Linda, straight off, and we can probably get through a lot of these quite quickly. Orbs and cattle mutilations. Have orbs ever been seen around the sites of cattle mutilations? And I just want to remind everyone that on our Earthfiles investigation last year of the cattle mutilation of the bull in Kansas, I think that over the dairy cow that was mutilated the week before, the rancher had photographed a strange mist which showed that there was some presence that was still above the body of the mutilated cow.
The one that comes to mind that I remember so clearly was out of Buenos Aires, Argentina, coming into the center part of that country. And I think there was a similar one in Brazil, but the one I'm talking about now, it was a case where the reporter, the person reporting in that country, was out fishing. So they're in a river stream, and they see suddenly, for the very first thing that they see, is what looks like a grapefruit. Their size was about a grapefruit, and it is sphere, and it is emanating more light than anything around in the area, and it was in evening hours. The sun was down. And the person reporting this, they were so like, what is this light? They went from their boat, they got to the shore, they got out, and they go over to where they saw this grapefruit-sized orb. And right there was a bloodless, trackless, mutilated animal. And it's been the one case in my mind. It was almost as if it was a direct communication of you in the boat. We are going to do something that you will see that will take you to this mutilated animal. That didn't happen in many other cases at all. But your question, which is the correct one, have the glowing orbs been reported at any of these other phenomena sites that would include bloodless, trackless animal mutilations, places where people were beamed up in an abduction, and the list could go on. I personally am convinced that the sphere, let's call it technology, is perhaps used by more than one type of ET, and that it is used to control, to attract, to interface mentally. It is one of the ET's tools of interfacing with our environment. And was that, some people said, well, it sounds like they were flaunting that they had been able to do this with this mutilated animal. But there's another point of view. Maybe these were non-humans that were not at all involved with the animal mutilations, and they wanted a human to see one. So much yet speculation on intent, as Lue and I discussed. What is the true intent? But the orbs, no matter which intent of those using it, the orbs seem to me to be everywhere on the planet. There have been cases, and that they are used for a variety of controls, attractions, maybe even download of information into human minds, but that they are a technology. And why are some aggressive? Why were the spheres at the home of Lue and his wife and 2 daughters? They would come right through the walls, as he said. They also saw them outside and all over the place. And that his association of the green sphere was, you don't mess around with it. So there's so much more to learn, Ian, but go on.
Yeah, and I'll echo your request as well. If any scientists or astronomers or anyone can help us with the star maps, then please contact us at earthfiles@earthfiles.com, and let's see if we can work together on running these star maps out. That's good. Okay, we've got Angel Wings is here in the chat this evening and says, please, Linda and Lue, why do we need the government to validate what we already know? How does this topic of conversation change once we simply take what we know to be true?
All of the bills from World War II to today that have had to do with the evolution of our military through wars has also included trying to understand UFOs and ETs. It has been the government that has clamped the boundaries down. It is the government that is controlling who will know and who will not know. And even though there are times when I have felt this is a betrayal of a democracy originally founded of, by, and for the people, I actually, in all of these 45 years to this night, and all of the people on the ranching side who have had mutilated animals, to many, many people that I have had the ability at least to communicate with in aerospace, in physics, in medicine, in a lot of different astronomy disciplines. They also recognize that in a paradigm shift as big as this one seems like it would be for people on Earth, 8 billion people, because historically there have been different points of view in religions and science about whether or not we were the only life form. And I can assert from everything that I know and the people that I have talked to, especially in aerospace, science, and medicine, that yes, the universe is teeming with consciousness. And that means a lot of different life forms with their consciousness interacting with the cosmic consciousness and the information about other dimensions, which are so important from my point of view, because the advanced ETs, as I understand it, who can move 100 light years in seconds or minutes. They do it by cushion shots out of the dimension that we're in into other dimensions. They have computers that can calculate where they want to go in the third dimension, and it's all done by resonant frequencies and words that I don't even know, so that the true nature around all of the details of abductions, mutilations, the orbs, the telepathy, on and on, when it is seen in the context of a much more layered universe of multiple dimensions that are key. We on Earth, as humans in this 21st century, we were not exposed to this as other intelligences from other places in our own universe, other universes, and other dimensions. People will argue, well, that's what religious philosophies and other philosophies have been about, even if the words were different. Right now, I personally do not think that an overwhelming number of people cannot handle the truth that we're not alone in this universe. I think without question that a majority of humans can accept that, and that they are just waiting for this to be officially announced. So this, to me, is the reason why back when Churchill, Eisenhower, World War II, it was a strict lockdown on all information that was happening, orbs that went around airplanes, the beams of light, reports of entities that were not human, all the way through Vietnam and other wars and on, up to abductions. So we've had an evolution to a brand new truth that some people feel is overwhelming. But it would be only overwhelming to people who had a locked-in version of the planet, the solar system, and the universe that we're in. As soon as you switch your lens and you're looking into all of the facets of everything that has been reported, 4 books, documentaries, thousands of interviews, Earthfiles is huge. Those people who have had their courage to talk with me honestly ever since the beginning of 1979, that investigation of mutilations, there has been an evolution for all of those people. And there's this huge body of experiencers. And they talk with another huge body of family. So I personally feel that there are so many more people who are saying, I told you so, than there are people who say, oh, I don't want to hear. And that we are in the transition period now. I hope to God that there isn't something physically devastating ahead by the year 2030 that some people have alluded to, both in government, in science, medicine. A lot of people have alluded to something huge that still has to happen. But if you take that out of the equation, the only other part of, let's say, we're looking at this in pieces so that we're adding up what has been reported in relationship to, is there anything to truly be concerned about? And that would be the tronoloids that were introduced to President Ronald Reagan, newly elected, March 6th to 8th, 1981 at Camp David. And I've reported a lot about that. A few other people have too. And that was the President of the United States, newly elected, in a presentation by people from Intel, NSA, DIA, CIA, and the list goes on, laying out for President Ronald Reagan, who was extremely interested, along with his wife Nancy, with UFOs and ETs because they had seen a dramatic UFO. Well, those were government people, facets of the big clampdown, who did the presentation. And it was about that there is a life form referred to as tronoloids, Epsilon Eridani. It's only 10.5 light years from our Earth, and it could be a problem because the insects don't have any personal grief against us. They just want planets without conflict, so they want Earth without us on it. Every time that I have brought up tronoloids with people that are giving me other information, I get the sense that the word tronoloid may represent something that government insiders think is a threat. But on the other side of discussions with people in aerospace, I get the sense that they think that they've got it handled through collaboration with other non-humans, such as the tall whites and the Nordics and perhaps some grays. So none of these are hard, provable answers until the government, which has been the controlling, focusing, contradictory energy since World War II, that made it impossible for people to talk publicly because of non-disclosure agreements and threats of prison and all of those things. But I feel compassion for the people who had to make those decisions that they would cover it all up. That made life easier for everybody. But covering up the truth, I think historically has always proved to be the wrong choice. I think that we Homo sapien, with souls, not everything may have a soul. I think we have very strong souls. And that it is a big, big part of the story that no one understands. But with having a soul, and being in a universe where the thought that dwells in the light is the divine, huge, infinite information, that at that biggest level, down to us on planet Earth, what I sense, we have to evolve. This is not a choice. We must evolve if this grand experiment of evolving biological humanoids is to survive. We must go further beyond what we have thought was reality. We must become much, much more aware of the complexities, and that with us, if there is evolution with governments and military also teaching us, we might get to a whole new landscape in which the universe is this living, incredible infinity, and that being in 1 or 2 or 3 dimensions in it is not the end all and be all. The complexity of dimensions, the complexity of being able to do cushion shots with frequencies, resonant frequencies, and knowing how to interact between dimensions. I find it so exciting. I would like to be on one of these ships going out to explore. And I hope that's more of the energy that you, I, and everyone will continue to be in as the government that has had a hard chore of trying to get through World War II and other wars and not open up a reality that they have known about for so long. That not only are we not alone in this universe, but that other intelligences with a variety of intents that we don't understand have been using our planet and are based inside of our planet below the oceans. That was what I was told December of 1999 by a Defense Intelligence Agency analyst in that meeting that I have told about here on the Earthfiles YouTube channel, in which it went on for 7 hours, and it was our bladders that stopped it. It was one of the most profound 7 hours of my life. And the person wanted me to know at least the truth, even if I could never, ever come back again, work again with him. He gave me a gift, a large truth about multiple other existences and intelligences and how they can base themselves inside of planets, inside of moons like Ganymede, and the surface life, up to a point, doesn't know and doesn't understand. So I think and hope that you will take the positive attitude that we are finally coming up to the crossroads, where on the other side, if we can go through these next 5 or 10 years wanting to know as much as we can, instead of running away from what might not be comprehensible. Try to keep learning as much as you can. Come to the Earthfiles YouTube channel. Read my books, my documentaries, see them. And come out on the other side excited and not afraid. On that note, I know I went in a long phrase, Ian, but I think that what I'll do is I'll take 3 more questions that you have, and I'll answer in a minute each.
Okay, Linda. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge some of our super chats this evening from our generous audience. We've got Judy Graham, who we've met many times at the conferences, Janet Craft, BCCCL, and Moonbird. Thank you very much. And I want to remind everybody that this episode of Earthfiles and all of our Earthfiles episodes are available as a podcast wherever you get your good podcasts from.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay, here we go. We got Tom the Man TV is in the chat today, and he wants to know, this is a recurring theme with him. He's got so many experiences which began when he was around about 6, or at least that's when his earliest memory of them began. His question is, if somebody has an alien implant, can it change their thoughts or actions? And he also says, why do aliens block our memories? It's so annoying.
Why do I what?
He says, Tom the Man TV says, if somebody has an alien implant, can it change their thoughts or actions?
Okay.
And also, why do aliens block our memories?
Oh, block our memories. Right off the bat, of the now more than 3,000 people I have interviewed in the 45 years since I began in 79, I would say that what I'm waiting for myself to rush in with thinking about all the people that I've interviewed and talked with, that the implants are confusing. In some cases, not many, but in some cases, where there's been an X-ray, an MRI, a CAT scan, something that's hard provable evidence, and that an investigator has found that the implant is actually made out of the tissue of that particular human, as opposed to some that are metallic or hard and seem to be something made somewhere else and then put into human bodies and animals. There are these cases where the tissue of the human itself made this object that is identified medically as being something like an implant. And it is, out of all of these 3,000 or 4,000 people that I have talked to, the bottom line is that from my point of view, that the abductee can be in a category of being accessed for specific genetic material that would be coming through eggs, sperm, blood, and tissues for a specific end product by the ETs. Then I think that there are other SWAS categories in which the implants are communication devices, and that these are people who will have vivid dreams, or they will have the telepathy that goes across their forehead, like they see symbols, and that they will say, oh, wait, you'll be talking with him, wait. And they're not being silly, and they're not being ostentatious. It's just wait, because they're getting communication that is coming in. And in those cases, for me, most of the people who have said that, wait, I'm getting something, those are the humans are associated with tall whites or Nordics. The grays is a different category. The teals are a different category. The mixture of the grays, small, large, AI versus biological, can be different. The reptilians, there's a variety. And it's real. And we're at that big bump in the road where we're trying to get over the bump to see what is truth. And there are so many different interactions going on among the current human population, some at war, some at peace, that relate to some of these interactions by non-humans for reasons that are still not clear, but there's a bell-shaped curve of a variety of reasons. And I think to be curious and not afraid, to be wanting to know the truth, not hide it, is the right place to be. And on that note, Ian, I know I went longer. I knew that this was going to be a program that there would be more of me. And next week, I promise, bring all of your questions, everything. I won't do the 4-minute bell exactly with Brad, but what I would like to do is have you guys take tonight's show and bring back, and we will start. I'll have a couple of news items, but then I'm going to go to you, and I might have Brad ring the bell to keep everything going. But don't you feel that even if we can't talk to each other, with each other, and that sometimes some of the subjects go on, that there is something very important that is taking place on what Lue Elizondo is reporting and others are reporting, and that there may be finally more congressional hearings coming. And if they are, I'll report about those. But that Earthfiles, the YouTube channel, that we are getting more and more people, and there is this feeling that I have that it is so important at this point going forward in what might be rough years in a transition, that we all have each other to at least communicate with about some of these thorny questions, not knowing exactly who is doing what, why, that we can continue in the Earthfiles YouTube channel. I'll show you news reports. I will share with you whatever I get on solar systems, everything, as best I can. And that I really, really respect what you all send me in letters, and that what we will do next Wednesday. You have your most important questions, and those of you who have had interactions with beings. And Ian will be able to help after I do a news with the sorting through, and we'll make it your show, and I'll be helping on those questions. How does that sound, Ian?
I think that's an excellent idea. There's a lot of people in the chat tonight, a lot of questions. I've got a lot of them all saved up here, and I want people to bring them. Good. And let's share them, let's enlarge Good. On them, because we need to give a lot of this subject its true deserves. And
I will be as short as I possibly can, but the idea is important content. And I thank you, dear Ian, Brad, Eric, and all of you for coming at a time when hopefully getting more and more news about this incredible universe that we're in will be exciting. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.